Okay, guys, so this is What If Spider-Man Was in Young Justice Part 6, guys. And last part was on um, episode 16, and, episode 16. Basically, we're going to be continuing with episode 17, 18, and 19, and basically, doing that. And this one, we'll be introduced to the symbiote, and the symbiote will latch back on to Peter, or come back to Peter in a different form. It won't be the original Venom symbiote, but it will be a symbiote in the DC universe. Basically, the symbiote in the DC universe will have the hive mind, so it will have the memories of, Venom, and the hate, and pretty much, it wouldn't have the hatred for Peter Parker, but eventually the symbiote will be taken off near like the end of season 1, and eventually come back on him during season 2, but we're just gonna get off of that. But basically, we start our story off with pretty much the team feeling the repercussions and the trauma from episode 16, the pretty much the simulation and the damage done to them. Basically, Black Canary tries to talk to them, but pretty much Connor isn't taking it well and doesn't want to talk about it. And Peter doesn't have his talk yet. But basically, we get switched to pretty much Metropolis, where we see a car and we see some new gods. Pretty much, we see some new gods. Was it Cypher? Another one called Victor. Another one called Bear, and a couple others, Dreamer and stuff like that. Now that story arc with Connor and everybody, basically I'm gonna be skipping that because it doesn't really involve Peter that much, and episode 17 doesn't really involve Peter. It's mainly about Connor. So basically, when that happens, when pretty much the Geosphere makes transforms into like a vehicle and stuff like that. Pretty much, I'm gonna be skipping over that because Peter isn't involved and he doesn't really change the story. So yeah, we get switched back to pretty much a psychologist talk with how Black Canary tries to talk to them, like how he tries to talk and calm down and try to figure out what happened to Megan and also Artemis. And we see that they talk a little bit. We get skipped back to Connor, but basically, if you've seen episode 17, you've seen it, and it's no point of narrating the same thing because it's just gonna be the same thing. It's not gonna really be changed. We get switched back to pretty much Megan being Aqualad being talked to, and Aqualad says he wants to resign as his team leader, and they come to the conclusion that the only obvious other team leader is Robin. Robin should be the next team leader. No. Aqualad tries to take the residence of team leader and give it to either Aqualad or Peter, because Peter is experienced. He's a hero in his timeline, and also he's very well intelligent and think things out pretty quickly. So basically, what I'm trying to say, Aqualad tries to give the role of leader to Peter or Robin, but basically mainly Peter because he's old enough. I think I made Peter like 16, 17, maybe 13, or 15. Basically, we get switched back to Connor and the New Gods, them tracking down some technology that was taken away from New Genesis. And after that, we get switched back to pretty much, actually Peter's talk. She tried to talk to Peter, and Peter says that I'm fine. And basically, he starts to remember the feeling that he had with the symbiote. And for a short minute, it felt good. It felt like he had all the power he needed in his life. It felt like he could do anything. It felt like he was back on top of the world. In the years he's been Spider-Man, he's been relying on his strength, on his power, his own will. And that's been good for him for a while. But over time, he felt like he needed somebody else. He needed another hand. Basically, we get switched back to Connor and pretty much the New Genesis technology being stolen and the New Gods fighting the thieves and whatnot. And we get switched back to pretty much Peter saying that okay, and basically him not really talking to he's not really talking to Black Canary. We get switched to Robin talking to Black Canary about how he doesn't want to be Batman and he just wants to be his own hero or whatnot. Him not really knowing who he wants to be. We get switched to pretty much us. We get switched back to the New Gods and pretty much Connor talking, and they track down the technology and blah blah blah. Basically, as they do that, we get switched pretty much to what was it? Pretty much to McGann getting the talk and pretty much talking with Black Canary, and we see that they talk the same type of way. Basically, as that happens, we see pretty much everything starts to go similar to the same. Just Peter talking, just us. The only difference in the episode is just us talking about Peter. As we get switched off from there, we get switched to episode 18, Secrets. Episode 18, Secrets, is going to be fairly similar. Now, I did do episode 16, Secrets, the first time, my last What If, with Danny Phantom was in Young Justice, part 6. And basically, it was basically the same thing. I just put Danny with Artemis. But basically, start the story off with a museum break-in. Pretty much the police say, the only thing that was stolen was a sword. And after that, they see the man that stole the sword in the first place in the corner hiding. As he jumps out, he takes the sword out and chants an incantation and pretty much gives him some sort of power and just swipes all the police with one foul just swish of a blade, taking them all down in seconds. Basically, after that, we get switched to the intro, but we get switched back to, the full moon where it's Halloween night. Basically, a scene that, Wally was dressed up as a werewolf or a teen wolf. Connor's being dressed up as a pretty much mummy from Megan. Megan dressed up as a bride or transformed into a dead bride for Halloween. And Peter was trying to figure out what was his, his specific type of outfit. And basically, he would have walked off saying, "I need to do something real quick." As he would do that, you see that pretty much he would have gone on his own journey, a type of journey. Basically, him going pretty much out, just swinging around, the city. Basically, he would be swinging around pretty much, Happy Harbor, and he would come across pretty much some sort of item. Basically, the item would have fell or would have crashed down in front of pretty much Peter, and Peter would see it. He would have familiar talks, and basically, it would just be a normal, pretty much, a normal asteroid. Nothing special, just a rock from outer space. He'll just leave it alone, just thinking about, everything about his life, about everything that led up to this point, and basically he'd just walk off. He would come back with his stealth black suit on as a Halloween costume, and basically just be dressed up as that. Pretty much Peter would get into his iconic not his iconic black suit, but his tech stealth suit black suit, and basically pretty much we would still see Centaura and Artemis solo going on their own journey, basically going out crime fighting on Halloween night. But we see the rest of the team go to Happy Harbor High School, where they would go to a Halloween party. And basically, Connor would show up there, and he would just see a bunch of people dressed up as leaguers or superheroes. And Peter would have told him that, I picked the right outfit. And basically, most people wouldn't really recognize Spider-Man's black suit, but they would recognize the white eyes, the spider symbol, and some of the, the build of Spider-Man. Them saying, why did you not go for the iconic, red and blue suit? Basically, Peter said, just normal. No, just normalcy or just uniqueness. As pretty much we get switched to the rest of the pretty much episode where we see a bunch of kids dressed up as just leaguers like Batman, Black Canary, Superboy, aka the Superboy from I feel like the first Superboy or the Superboy with the iconic like red and blue type of design. As we get switched back to pretty much the high school after we get switched to Artemis, we get switched back to pretty much them getting some sort of notification of sorts. And as the episode goes similar the same, we see that Peter halfway through just leaves. But we get switched back to the cave where we see Aqualad and Robin talking to Speedy. And that part of the story hasn't really changed that much, at least. And basically, pretty much, they still do conclude that Robin should be the team leader because Peter is brass still, but Peter doesn't really understand, this universe. And pretty much Peter has things in his mind or his own things to deal with. Basically, we just switch back to Artemis and Zendara pretty much having their whole entire fighting thing with the guy with the sword. and pretty much running into the girl with secrets and whatnot. As pretty much we get switched back to the rest of the team, or the rest of the group, basically them at the high school. As we see that happen, we basically see something go down in the high school. As that goes down, we see that some sort of aliens show up, or some sort of device shows up at the high school. Connor goes up against that alien creature, or that being, and the being straight up just folds him, like straight up just drops him. Basically, we see that Peter runs out of the high school and starts to go wham on the alien. He starts to dodge most of its telepathic attacks, and pretty much as it happens, we see that it does go down, and pretty much we just shown that, well, Megan just made it up, and she just transformed to give it off that, special feel of scared. Basically, after that, you see pretty much Peter would have said, cool, isn't it? And basically, we get switched back to pretty much, what was it? It gets switched back to pretty much the kid that was, scared from this. He runs back in saying, it's aliens, blah, blah, blah. Basically, him just being scared out of his mind. After that, we get switched back to pretty much the rest of the team with Santara and Artemis, and the story goes similar the same, not really being changed because Peter isn't really involved in there. And after that, pretty much we see that the guy with the sword gets taken down pretty quickly from the secret girl. And after that episode, we get switched to episode 19. After that, we get switched to episode 19, where we finally see, well, the symbiote in action, and we get seeing Peter merging with the symbiote. After that, we get switched to pretty much the beginning of the episode, where we see pretty much the magic user from the Dr. Fate episode, basically him doing some sort of incantation or spell. As he does this, he summons some magic users, or some ancient magic users, basically him trying to make a plan of sorts. As he does this, we get switched back to pretty much Mount Justice, where we see Connor transforming some stuff, and Megan transforming some stuff alongside Connor also transforming as well. Peter also transforming stuff as well. As it happens, we see Santara, everybody else, blah, blah, blah. Things go similar the same. And basically, we see that pretty much. Oh, sorry, guys. We see pretty much out of nowhere, we hear something go down. And we pretty much see the heroes, or Batman, and pretty much Martian Manhunter, or I think Retronato, they get teleported away, basically out of thin air. And they're confused about this. Or Batman, Retronato, and Santara pretty much get teleported away out of nowhere. They're being confused on, what just happened. Basically, as this happens, we pretty much see that, well, we get hit with the intro, but we see that pretty much, well, all adults have been taken away from the world. Basically, the work of the magic user from the beginning of the episode. All adults have been teleported away, and basically kids or teenagers are left. Basically, we see that Billy Batson, aka Captain Marvel, is just chilling in his house with his dad, and out of nowhere he's teleported away. He's confused on where he went, and basically, tries to figure out what happened. As he tries to put a plan together, he pretty much, sees everything go down. Like, he sees the woman on the news channel is teleported away. We see cars get crashed because parents are gone, and the cars are just left empty. And we see that pretty much the neighborhood is in chaos because, all adults are just teleported away out of thin air. And imagine just being in a plane, like, bro, you gone. But basically, we get switched back to pretty much Robin and Santara trying to just check out what's happening, alongside Peter also helping as well, because Peter is a type of scientist himself. We see that Kid Flash is running around trying to figure out what's going down. And pretty much we still see Santara talk to Robin and talk about, where her father went and where he could be. Peter just ignores this, and he just walks off saying, you guys can handle this yourself. As Peter's walking off, we get switched back to Connor, and he helps up some kids that, in trouble. And we get switched back to pretty much some teenagers trying to vandalize stuff. But we see that Megan stops them halfway through. And basically, we see that they, gather up most of the kids and, just making sure they're safe. Basically, Peter swinging over there and helping them as well. But him in his iconic Spider-Man outfit, and other than just, in his street clothes. Basically, him just, entertaining the kids with web tricks and swinging them around and like picking them up and stuff like that. Pretty much Peter straight up, just make some quips and stuff like that, just entertaining the kids, keeping them occupied. Connor does the same type of thing. Bas- Basically, you're seeing pretty much, what was it, Captain Marvel, pretty much run around trying to figure out what's going on. As we see him go around the city, and he goes into a photo booth. He goes to the photo booth, and pretty much, well, what was it, waits for something to happen. As it happens, we see that nothing happens, and he's just, angered by this. But as he does this, we see that pretty much out of nowhere, they see a broadcast of pretty much Kid Flash, Peter, Robin, and Aqualad talking about how parents have been teleported away, and all adults have been teleported away somewhere they don't know. Basically, what happens is pretty much Billy tries to figure out what gone down, and basically runs around the city, going to pretty much a cell tower source or pretty much a airport. Basically, he goes to his adult friend, basically asking her, can you take me somewhere? As they pretty much talk, we get switched back to pretty much, well, Wally thinking about what should we do with the, maybe we can save this or fix this with the helmet. Basically, as we get switched back to pretty much Peter in the high school, pretty much treating with the kids, we see that he pretty much walks off away from the kids, and pretty much, well, it wasn't because he's not at Mount Justice anymore because they're still doing their plan, but Peter is off somewhere else. Peter is swinging around, and he's called by Connor, telling him to come back. Pretty much Peter says, okay, I'll be right back in a couple minutes. Him swinging around, just clearing his head. As he swings down, we see that he's about a mile away from the meteorite that crashed yesterday, and he's just there. As it happens, we get switched to pretty much, we get switched to pretty much Billy, where we see Billy driving around with his friend, who is adult friend. Basically, his adult friend her birthday turning, and she's about to turn into a full-grown adult. As she does that, the second she turns into a full-grown adult, she teleports away. And they're both in a plane, and she was in the driver's seat, so she's gone, and the plane is crashing. Billy thinks of one thing and one thing only, turn into Shazam, like say the words Shazam. There's no other way, or else he's gonna crash and die. As we get switched back to pretty much Antara and their perspective, or pretty much the leaguer's perspective, we see that pretty much the adults in the real world are, pretty much they're teleported into a exact replica of their world, just with no kids or children. So their children, their babies, their kids are all gone. Basically, we see that pretty much that in the other universe with the adults are trying to make a plan and basically trying to figure out how they're going to do this. As we see, Billy is trying his hardest to fly the plane normally. He says the word Shazam and he transforms into Captain Marvel, but he's teleported into the other universe with the adults. As Captain Marvel flies down, he grabs pretty much his female friend or his adult friend that just turned into a full-grown adult, basically grabbing her before she could fall into the ground and die. As he flies back to Mount Justice, meeting up with Batman and Santara, he tells them, about where he came from and about how he teleported in this universe. Batman asking questions. As the same thing happens, he transforms back into Billy, saying Shazam, and he teleports right back into the Mount Justice, where the original, universe is, where the kids. Basically, he talks to them about how he can teleport to each realm as he pleases with his Shazam powers. As it happens, they communicate with each other through Billy and Shazam, basically communicating with each other. As they try to make up a plan about what to do, we see that pretty much they find out who's doing this, and we see that Santara, Wally, and everybody try to take him down. As that happens, we see that as he's super close to actually killing one of them, we see out of nowhere, pretty much, a silhouette similar to Peter shows up swinging into swinging in right in time, drop kicking the villain in the actual jaw. I mean, just drop his whole feet, kick into this man's whole jaw, pushing him back. We see that he looks at him and says, "I'm gonna put some dirt in your eye." I'm like, yeah, I know that kind of sounds corny, but I'm gonna put some dirt in your eye. And basically, he starts to run and sprint towards the villain. He tries to dodge most of his attacks, spitting pretty much symbiote tentacles, grabbing him and swinging him down to the ground. We get a little bit of a flashback where we see Peter when he was a couple miles away from the original crash of the meteorite. The meteorite's goo ran out of the meteorite, and that meteorite was a meteorite from this universe's Clintar planet. Basically, we see that it latched on the Peter as he was, just perching on a building nearby, and basically attached onto him. It having a clear mind, but it also having the memories of Spider-Man's venom. Basically, it eventually will turn on Peter if Peter rejects it. But for now, Peter is embracing it a type of way because he thinks it's just a new symbiote that he can help, and that it won't turn on him because it's a new symbiote. It's not from his universe, and it's most likely safe. As we get switched to pretty much Peter would have been fighting the villain, pretty much shooting multiple blasts of energy. Multiple blasts of symbiote, using his tentacles to take them down, and all sorts of other stuff. As we get switched back to pretty much the magic users fighting against the heroes or the adults of the world, Red Tornado, Batman, and Satara. I don't understand why Red Tornado is teleported there because Red Tornado isn't a human being, and he isn't technically an adult or a human being, but he is a couple years old, so maybe. Basically, we see that pretty much they would have taken down the other, adult sorcerers, where we see pretty much the fight would play out similar the same, but pretty much the, child or the teenage sorcerer or like the, the sorcerer that was there with the children, he would straight up, start to fight against him, shooting multiple tentacles. We would say that Megan would have recognized this type of thing because sometime later, or some universe later, they would see, they would recognize, she would recognize the symbiote. She would say, "Peter, what are you doing with that?" Basically, Peter's saying, "I'm doing what I can do." And he's feeling more powerful than ever. And as he's right near the edge, where he's literally beating the absolute doo-doo water, just beating the absolute shit out of this villain user, he's beating him to a bloody pulp. Like, he's confused on how Peter's this strong. Because Peter's anchored, and Spider-Man's pretty... If Spider-Man's peed off, he can do a lot of damage. Plus, he has a new symbiote. And pretty much he starts to punch the magic user down to the ground because he was able to intervene or get into the force field. As he's doing this, we see that Batman and the rest of the team go up against the other sorcerers. And as this is happening, we get switched to pretty much Satara putting on the helmet and actually, physically and magically defeating pretty much, the magic user. As it happens, instead, he tries to teleport away and get away, but Peter grabs him before he can go, beating him to a bloody pulp. Basically, before he can do that, he is able to get away, shooting Peter with a energy blast, a sound wave magic attack. And after that, after he runs off, we basically see that Peter and the rest of the team are teleporting together in the same universe where the adults are at. We see that Peter basically looks around and pretty much the symbiote goes back into his body, as seeing the original red and blue suit outside of his body. After that, McGann tries to talk to Peter, telling him to take it off. Peter says it's not hurting anybody, and I feel more powerful than I've ever been. And basically, him feeling that strength he had when he had the symbiote on before he knew it was controlling him. But this symbiote is slowly controlling Peter, but he doesn't know it yet. We pretty much see that Peter and the rest of the team are, pretty much afterwards, they see that Santara has the helmet on, and Dr. Fate isn't letting her go. But we see that Santara's father takes her place, basically taking the helmet for himself and taking the place of Dr. Fate. And that's where we're going to leave it off this episode. We see Wally arrive back to his house, where we see pretty much Billy arrive back to his father's house, or his foster parents' house, and basically, hugs him. He gets switched back to Artemis, and reunited with her mother, and just Peter just being in Mount Justice alone. We see Peter basically, is just experimenting with his symbiote, or we see pretty much Wally pretty much pit the sippy cup he got from the kid doing the whole entire, fiasco, and hits it as a trophy. As we get to shot to Satara and the girls talking alongside Robin also being there, you see that's where I'm gonna be off here, guys. So, guys, next part, I will be introducing, or we'll be going more in depth that the symbiote will be affecting this, and part 2 is when Peter will get the symbiote off of his body. But for now, I feel like I'm going to be doing episode 20, 21, and 22 for part 7. And in episode 22, Peter may get the symbiote off his body. But I'm going to leave it up here, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you guys like and subscribe. And as always, guys, have a blessed day.